Hi, I'm Tabi Kweji. Welcome to SABC News' 12th episode of the podcast series in first person, where we capture first-hand accounts of traumatic experiences and the often challenging journey to survival.
Coming up,
the beatings became so severe that if he would beat me up, he would take the closest thing near him. I had 2 broken arms. I had a broken leg during all those beatings. Then he went to fetch this acid, and then he started to throw. I wanted to hold me strong when he threw that on me, but I couldn't. I was screaming and I was crying.
In this episode, we hear the story of Charmaine Williams, who was in a physically abusive marriage for 13 years. She finally got the courage to leave after years of being beaten up, verbally abused, and even had acid thrown on her. But she lives with the scars.
I met him in 1989. And as I said, he was my prince. Because I'm in love with love. He was just the perfect gentleman in every way. And then we went out for 6 months. We went out. And he did all the right things. I received all the right treatment. He treated me like his queen, his princess. And then 6 months into the relationship, he asked me to marry him. And I accepted it immediately, irrespective of my age. I was 18 years already at that time. I was still very young, but had a child at the age of 16, which was also another challenge for me. My husband was he was so friendly, he was so loving, he was this perfect person for me. And he was very protective over me. He didn't want anybody to harm me. He was always the one that would protect me from the world outside. Nobody could say nothing wrong to me. Nobody was even allowed to touch me in a wrong manner. Then he would put on his protective gear. That was how he was. And here and there was red flags, but I chose to ignore them because I was then so in love with my prince. And these are not things that princes do to princesses.
According to divorcelaws.org, South Africa has one of the highest incidents of domestic violence in the world. And sadly, domestic violence is the most common and widespread human rights abuse in South Africa. Every day, women are murdered, physically and sexually assaulted, threatened and humiliated by their partners within their homes. It is estimated that 1 out of every 6 women is regularly assaulted by her partner.
And then 5 years into our marriage, things really, the red lights was now fuming. They were more than one. Things that I could not even ignore anymore. In that 5 years, the beating started to begin. He would verbally swear at me, break me down. I was not even supposed to look pretty even anymore. If I was wearing makeup, he would look at me. Just see how you look. Look at the way you are dressed. You're not supposed to look like that. And it broke me down. It really broke me down mentally. My personality was the thing that clashed with him. Because my personality would attract people to like me, whether it's a young person or an older person. So it's male, female, kids. People were just comfortable in my presence. And he was just not comfortable with me interacting with anyone for that matter. And then maybe because I just had eyes for him then. So maybe he noticed something different. I don't know, was it in his mind, or did he really see something that might have triggered it? But to me, I felt that nothing I did led up to his reaction then. Because as I said, I only had eyes for him. There was nothing that I think that I did wrong during that 5 years. The beatings became so severe. He was this type of person that if he would beat me up, he would take the closest thing near him, whether it was with a broom, whether it was a kettle, whether it was a spade, whether it was a cup or a bowl. The closest to him at that point he would use against me. And not even once I tried to fight back. I never did. I did not even raise my voice, so to speak. And then I had 2 broken arms. I had a broken leg during all those beatings in that time frame.
A study conducted between 2002 and 2003 using the World Health Organization version of the Composite International Diagnostic Interview found that the risk for attempted suicide is highest in the age group 18 to 34, and coloureds had the highest lifetime prevalence for attempts. About 7.5% of unplanned and 50% of planned first attempts occur within 1 year of the onset ideation. South Africans at higher risk for suicide attempts were females.
During all those times of the beating, the 8 years, I had numerous suicidal attacks where I attempt to kill myself. Whether it was by drinking some pills, a handful of pills, but nothing happened to it then. I was still alive. God felt then that it was not my time. But finally, I had this, I didn't even feel myself this day. It was as if I was out of my body that day. He was abusing me so mentally, and that day I was at my workplace. And then he came there with a story, and I just walked out of my workplace that moment. And then I climbed the fence. And then I climbed over that fencing there, wanting to go and jump into the pickle. And he decided to follow me that day to see where I was going. And he saw me climbing over the fence. And the shoes that I was wearing that day slipped on the fence. And that is when I came out of my trance. And it was as if I was waken from a sleep that day. So he helped me back, and I realized what I was about to do, to end my life for this guy. And then he helped me back over, and he took me to the hospital that evening for my finger to be stitched.
According to pbs.org, the family's life becomes a cycle of violence. Life begins to revolve around anticipating violence, coping with actual acts of violence, or recovering from the violence. Ironically, a family can become tremendously close in the recovery phase. The man who was terrifying and intimidating turns into a remorseful, needy, and dependent man. The woman who was battered then will feel sorry for the man and recommit to him in a fantasized hope that the abuse won't happen again. But the cycle of abuse will begin again, often becoming worse. The cycle of abuse can only be broken with awareness and professional help.
Remorse, that was always a funny part for me, because he will be so remorseful. He would apologize for what he did to me. He would buy me something that I've wanted for years, and he never came to buy me that thing, the presents and all those things he bought me, showing his remorse. And then for months I could see, this guy is really sorry for what he did to me. He's loving, he's caring, making me to fall in love with him again, all over again. And then as soon as I'm in my comfort zone again, it starts all over again. After that suicide attempt that is when I started the divorce proceedings. 13 years into the marriage then, I finally started the proceedings. And it went through in that month. He was not very happy with it. Even on the day when I was standing in the High Court waiting for my divorce to be finalized, I received a call that he was looking for me all over with a gun to kill him, myself, and the kids. 3 months after the divorce, because during the divorce, we came to an agreement that it's near to the final exams. We will wait until the kids are done with the exams, and then I would go and live with my mom. So it was an agreement between him and me. So here we were sitting, the schools were closed, it's holiday, December came and December went, and it's finally in January before schools reopening. And so I told him, but we agreed that before schools open, I'll be at my mom's, living at my mom's, because we are divorced now.
Justice.gov.za says, in general, domestic violence may be an ongoing pattern of coercive control and may increase in severity over time. Forms of physical abuse in terms of the Domestic Violence Act could include shoving, slapping, punching, kicking, throttling, biting, and assault with objects, guns, knives, or any other dangerous weapons.
That morning, on his way, he took me to my workplace that morning. So we had this discussion. And he asked me for a cup of coffee, and I was already late that morning. I decided, no man, I can't still make this guy a cup of coffee. I'm late. I have to start working. And so I told him, no man, I can't make you a cup of coffee now. And then it was where he snapped. He started beating me up right there at my workplace. And I started to get so scared. He was grabbing me there, pushing me, throwing me in the car, and then he drove home. Because it was still holidays, the kids were at home. And now they were looking at us. What is happening here? Shame. I can still remember their faces. They went out when we came in. They were standing outside in the yard. And we went in. And then he was swearing and he was angry. And then he went to fetch this acid. It was not a pure acid, but it was a liquid thingy that he used on his cars. But it had a high acid base. And because he had this thing in his hand, I immediately knew what that was. And because it was something that none of us used to touch, because we know the effect of that chemical. And then he started to throw. I wanted to hold me strong when he threw that on me, but I couldn't. I was screaming and I was crying because the impact was so harsh. And then he lifted me up and he went to put me in the bathtub to wash the acid off. Yeah, that was all part of his regret. That instance, rain water over my body that instant, and the kids were crying. I can still hear their cries, how they were crying. And after he bathed me, rinsed me from all that chemicals, the burns was there and they were visible. Then he picked me up, went to put me on the bed, and he was looking at me, telling me how sorry he was, and begging for me not to lay a case against him because he could see my injuries. And if he takes me to the doctor now, the doctor will contact the police, the authorities. Then the implications of the burns became so severe. I started vomiting. I started to get a fever, and then we phoned the ambulance. I went to the hospital. Actually, we did not phone the ambulance. He was there all the time. I think he was there just to shadow and see what I was going to do. And then he saw the implications that I was not well, and he took me to casualties that evening. And I was immediately admitted because I had such a high fever. the scars were infected and they had to handle me there. I was in hospital for almost 2 weeks, yes.
Hein Hofmeyer, a clinical psychologist at Akeso Nelspruit, says taking the decision to leave the abusive relationship is often the most difficult part. Victims feel confusion, guilt or self-blame, and isolation or withdrawal from their support network. You might even believe that your partner will change, or they may promise they will seek help for their abusive behavior, cautions Hofmeyer. If the abuse is repetitive and your spouse or partner has not changed their behavior, your safety becomes the only thing that should matter to you.
After I was being hospitalized, I went back with him. I went to stay with him out of fear for another 9 years in full. And during that 9 years, a little boy was conceived. And one day, Sonia August invited me to a workshop. It was a VEP workshop then. It was for a full week. So I decided, I was sitting at home, being bored, doing nothing, and I wanted a new challenge, or even if it was just to be between people, not in those four walls anymore. And then I went, and he was furious that day with me. But I went, and that evening when I came home, he was not home. But luckily his brother and his brother's wife came to visit. And I told them that he phoned me the whole day and that he told me what he was about to do with me when he gets home. So really when he got home, they were still there. And you know, he didn't even worry about them. He was so angry, he wanted to hit me, and then his brother intervened, and that was the day that I finally decided I had enough. I can't anymore. I've been through this for too long. This is my end. This is how it's gonna end. I'm going to stop this irrespective, even if I have to sacrifice, because my little boy was 3 years then, and my daughter, I'm so sorry to say, but I can't even remember how old she was then. But I sacrificed those 2 kids of mine that evening just to get away from him. And then I went with my brother-in-law. He took me to my mom.
There are many organizations which help people who are being abused. Among them are the likes of People Opposed to Women Abuse or POWER, Family and Marriage Association of SA, also known as FAMSA, Stop Gender Violence, and Tears Foundation, among others.
After the time that I went to the workshop, I started working at the center with Sonia August. There I was trained as a trauma counselor. So I started to work intensively with women that went through similar things that I was going through. And in the center was also women that was raped, so that was another challenge for me. But all that pain and trauma that the ladies went through was my healing. It contributed to my healing. During that time, I also had the chance to speak to other women. I became a mouthpiece for other women to tell their story. Women that were scared like me, who were too scared to speak out, who were too scared to come out. I encourage them that there's always a chance. It's not easy. It's never easy to walk out. But somewhere, somehow, you need to tell yourself that I had enough. It can't go any further. It's either I'm going to die, or it's either I'm going to take an opportunity to get out of this situation. But irrespective of that, there's always help out there.
Charmaine's journey to survival began with the decision to no longer be a victim. Healing was a process that involved looking beyond her own circumstances and offering support to others. Now her story can inspire millions of women who face abuse from their spouses from all over the world.
I would say I'm at a very good place. I received healing psychologically, mentally, spiritually. Today, I stand as an ambassador for gender-based violence. And for me, it feels so good to give back to the community. And I can say this in my humbleness. It's good to give back and to hold another woman's hand, to raise that hand with pride and to tell her that you are not alone. You are never alone. We are here. We are uniting with you. I can really say this with pride. I'm a soldier for gender-based violence.
Thank you for listening. You can visit sabcnews.com or SABC News on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube for the latest episode of In First Person. For SABC Digital News, I'm Tabi Gwiji.